a sick brother. A father who at the time of the shooting was buying snacks for a movie night with his family. Every one of these victims left behind loved ones who are grieving that loss, and several of those loved ones are in the room with us today. I thank them for being here. There are no words that fill the empty chairs at your dinner table or the empty spaces in your heart. But your willingness to sit in this room, to honor the memory of those you lost, is a lesson in courage and love. Please know that you are not alone. America joins you in grief. We offer our deepest condolences and, most importantly, our commitment to do something. When gunmen are slaughtering babies, grandparents, and other innocent children, Americans in grocery stores, schools, neighborhoods, and houses of worship, we have a responsibility to do something. Nearly 9 in 10 Americans agree we need sensible gun law reform in this country, and we need it now. We often hear the question asked, why do mass shooters engage in such horrific acts? Well, one of their motivations is the focus of this hearing: domestic terrorism, a threat that is, in the words of the FBI Director Christopher Wray, metastasizing across the country. I was just handed a press release as I came into the room that there was a federal indictment handed down today against 5 members of the Proud Boys white supremacist group, including Enrique Tarrio, its former leader, charging them with seditious conspiracy for their roles in the January 6th assault. For those who believe that what the subject matter of this hearing is a contrivance and doesn't reflect reality, these indictments indicate that we are talking about real-life crime and real-life terrorism. Violent extremism, however, just doesn't appear out of thin air. I'd like to turn to a video on the role of the media and the role that they played in dragging hateful rhetoric into mainstream America, and sadly, how it's inspiring acts of racist violence.
The country's being stolen from American citizens.
Want to replace you, the American voters, with newly amnestied citizens.
More obedient voters from the third world.
Their plot to remake America is to bring in the illegals.
Makes our own country poorer and dirtier.
Our civilization is superior to the culture that these immigrants are bringing.
This is a flat-out invasion. It's a war.
Undefended, it collapses.
We're just going to consign tens of thousands, perhaps millions of Americans to their deaths.
We have every right to fight to preserve our nation and our heritage and our culture.
One people, one nation, and democracy. One people, one nation, and democracy.
An 18-year-old white supremacist opened fire on a supermarket. The Great Replacement theory motivated this 18-year-old white supremacist.
Audrey was my nephew. He just came to, he was on a birthday party, and he left behind 5 kids.
She was that light that shone through whatever darkness might have been present.
I enjoyed our life together.
She loves cooking and sharing food with us.
When all hell broke loose at Cox, Aaron Salter, the policeman, stepped into his assignment.
A woman who survived 3 aneurysms and breast cancer.
Catherine Massey calling for federal action against growing gun violence that ended up taking her life.
Took away my mother and my best friend. This needs to be fixed.
One day I'll be up there with her. One day I never.
I first held a hearing on domestic terrorism in the year 2012, 10 years ago, after a white supremacist murdered 7 Sikh worshipers in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Sadly, 10 years later, this threat has only grown worse. In the decades since Oak Creek, violent white supremacists have killed innocent Americans in a series of sickening attacks. They include mass shootings at the Emmanuel AME Church in South Carolina in 2015, Pittsburgh's Tree of Life Synagogue in 2018, and Walmart in El Paso, Texas in 2019. While each of these attacks was committed by a lone gunman, they're part of a larger pattern. Don't take my word for it. During the prior administration, the FBI and Department of Homeland Security found that, and I quote, white supremacist extremism poses a persistent threat of lethal violence, and that since 2000, white supremacists, quote, were responsible for more homicides than any other domestic extremist group. That was a finding by our government. White supremacists were responsible for more homicides than any other domestic extremist movement. White supremacist violence has swept across America, and this trend raises the obvious question: why is it getting worse? We cannot deny that hate has a big platform. As we all saw in the video, there are media figures like Tucker Carlson dragging racist conspiracy theories into mainstream America. More than 400 episodes of Tucker Carlson's show have amplified the so-called Great Replacement conspiracy theory, guiding principle of modern white supremacist movement. As lawmakers, we must speak at one voice in repudiating this incendiary rhetoric, along with any individual or extremist group that resorts to violence. And while there are no simple solutions for addressing violent extremism, a promising start is the Domestic Terrorist Prevention Act, which I first introduced in 2017. I'm sorry to say that the Senate was unable to move this forward when I offered it 2 weeks ago. But my hope is that this hearing will mark a shift in our willingness to work together in combating domestic terrorism. That is our obligation as lawmakers, and that is our responsibility to the families like those in this room who've lost a loved one to unspeakable acts of hate. With that, I turn to the ranking member, Grassley, Senator Grassley, for his opening statement.
Thank you.